بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير حديث محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر أمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد فحياكم الله جميعا وبارك الله فيكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all for your attendance and allow this jalsa, this gathering, to be one which is a gathering of barakah. What I intend, inshallah, to discuss with yourselves today in these short minutes, and it's inshallah something ala wajh al-ikhtisar, as they say, in a manner which is brief, is that I wanted to discuss with yourselves some advices pertaining to the affair of marriage in light of the Quran and the Sunnah, in light of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. For no doubt, all of us are in need of the reminder. All of us are in need of the reminder, and all of us are in need of advice for one another. Whether we be individuals that are not married, but we are at the age where we are seeking marriage, or whether we be individuals that are married and we are navigating the whole process of being married, living through the years of marriage, finding out about our spouses and how to live with them in harmony. Or an individual that is married and he finds himself in a scenario where he may find some hardships in his marriage. What is the best manner that the person navigates himself throughout those hardships? And likewise, it could be an individual that is divorced. He was married. However, his marriage was not successful. And so thus, in this scenario, how does he deal with that affair of divorce? So this is something which is no doubt, marriage itself in Islam and what's been legislated in the Deen is one which is applicable to many of us and about the vast majority of us, and the Nasa'ih advices are applicable to many of us, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. And where I wish to begin, inshallah Ta'ala, is with what everything begins with. What I first want to discuss with you, inshallah, is what everything begins with. And what is that, ikhwan? After the masjid. Intention. What does everything in our deen begin with? Niyyah, taqwa, someone says. Khalas, we're getting very close. Iman in what though? Everything in the terms of our deen begins with one thing. Tawheed. Everything must begin with Tawheed. Everything must go back to Tawheed of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. So the first thing we should discuss in terms of Tawheed itself is that no doubt the Muslim believes in the existence of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And that the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is affirmed by four things. The existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is affirmed by way of four things. The first is his fitrah. So the natural disposition of a person enables us to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of all of creation, that Allah Azza wa Jal is the only one worthy of worship, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-A'la, is the most high. Allah Ta'ala states, Sabbih isma rabbika al-A'la. Glory be unto your Lord, the most high. And this is something which the fitrah is in agreement with, that we're born upon that affair. That we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of all of creation, we believe that He is the only one worthy of worship, and we believe that He's the most high. The second, barakallahu feekum, is what is referred to as the aql, the intellect. That our intellect allows for us to ponder upon the ayat al-kawniyah, the ayat, the signs of the creation itself, to ponder upon these signs, and to deduce from those signs, barakallahu feekum, that there must be a creator for that creation. That we understand, when pondering upon the intricacies of the creation, that they're brought about in terms of the existence from Allah Ta'ala, the creator. The third thing, after the aql, is what is referred to as the naql. The naql, that which is transmitted. And that which is transmitted is referring, no doubt, to the text, the Quran and the Sunnah. In every salah we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, all praise due to Allah, the Lord of all creation. So we affirm this affair, that Allah Ta'ala is the Rabbil Alameen. And we affirm His existence. We affirm the wujood of Allah by way of that which Allah Ta'ala has informed us of, way of the Quran and the Sunnah. And then the fourth is the existence of the mu'jizat. The existence of the mu'jizat, the miracles, at the hands of the prophets and messengers. That these miracles can only have occurred with the permission of Allah. So a miracle generally is what we understand to be something that occurs which differs and is unique from what is naturally, something that is naturally we know to occur. So for example, the splitting of the moon. For example, Musa alayhi salam turning the staff to a snake. These are all examples. However, none of these things could have occurred except with the existence of Allah, and except with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thereafter, we have if we affirm the existence of Allah by way of these four things, and we affirm that Allah Ta'ala is the Khaliq, Al-Razik, He's the one that creates, He's the one that sustains, He's the one that gives life, He's the one that brings about death, then by way and as a necessity, then no doubt He is the only one worthy of worship. He is the one that's bestowed upon us these ni'am. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that's bestowed upon us these blessings. In reality, we cannot add these blessings. We cannot as an individual cannot enumerate his blessings. And so, the abd which is shakir, the servant which is truly shakir, the one that is truly grateful, has to turn to Allah in obedience. This affair of rububiyyah goes hand in hand as mutalazim with the affair of uluhiyyah. Once you've affirmed the rububiyyah of Allah, the lordship of Allah, the existence of Allah, the actions that He bestows upon us, it's upon you. You have to worship Him alone. If you've affirmed that Allah is the one who created us, and He has brought us into existence, then, of course, He's the only one that is worthy of worship alone. And so thus, this is why Allah Ta'ala states, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And this is why Allah Ta'ala states, He did not create the jinn, nor the mankind except to worship me alone. Thereafter, we understand that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala did not create us with this first wajib, this first obligation, and leave us without any means of coming to know of that obligation. Rather, He Azza wa Jal has sent prophets and messengers to convey that obligation of Tawheed to us. So Allah Ta'ala states, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رُسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. That I've sent to every nation a messenger with the command to worship Allah Ta'ala alone and stay away from the false deities. So it's something that is sent to every nation. A messenger that is sent to every nation. And so, no doubt, the seal of all of those prophets and messengers is the Nabi and the messenger of this ummah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that which he has come with by way of his sunnah is the sunnah which is upon khair and the wara in which it is upon completion and perfection. As Allah Ta'ala states, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمْ إِسْلَامَ دِينًا. Allah Ta'ala states, today I completed my favor upon you, perfected your religion for you, and chosen Islam as your religion. Chosen Islam as your religion. And everything that we do in accordance with the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is upon perfection, is upon completion. And so the importance why we wish to discuss this affair of Tawheed first and Sunnah first, we're discussing any topic, is that we must understand that everything goes back to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything goes back to the central reason as to why we are here within this dunyā, to worship Allah. And so when a person becomes engrossed with affairs of the dunya, when he becomes engrossed with the affair of trying to get married, or becomes engrossed with the trials of marriage itself, or he becomes engrossed with the difficulties of just navigating the dunya itself, he should always refer the affair back to Allah. Refer the affair back to the reason for his existence, which is worshiping Allah Ta'ala alone without any partners. And refer the affair back to the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so the first thing, no doubt the person should address when it comes to marriage itself, is that the person should seek to follow the advice of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. For indeed, as we mentioned, perfection is following his way. And the one that is seeking to be upon Tawheed and seeking to worship Allah in the best way possible follows his way, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so, the first thing is that a person seeks marriage. And how should he seek marriage? Except that he follows the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he states, يا معشر الشباب من يستطيع منكم الباء فليتزوج. O gathering of youth, whoever is able from you to marry, then let them marry. And this is the advice of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, encouraging the person to marry in their youth, encouraging the person to marry when they're able to within their youth. For no doubt, when the person marries within their youth, it aids them when it comes to lowering the gaze, and aids them when it comes to preservation of the private parts, preserving and protecting the person from zina. And so the person, no doubt, he should reflect upon that, first and foremost. That when he's seeking marriage, he seeks, no doubt, to fulfill this command of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He seeks to fulfill that command of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam, where he's commanded to worship, to marry as soon as he's able to do so. And to not be from those individuals, barakallahu fikum, that place barriers in front of themselves that may not be barriers which are barriers which have any due rights to be placed there. So a person may say, I'm going to wait till I get to this age before I get married. I have to wait till I get to 25 before I get married. Or I have to wait till I finish this till I get married. No doubt, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the statement, and it was muqayyad. And the statement was bound, and it was conditional upon istita'a. It was conditional upon the one being able to do so, having the ability to do so. And no doubt, when we understand ability, then the ability is that the person is able to run a household in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah effectively. If the man is able to get married and he's able to run the household in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah effectively, he's able to be the Amir of that household and the ruler of that house. He's able to, by way of when he comes forth and he steps forth and he seeks marriage from a wali, a guardian of a woman, that he is able to do so in a manner where he says that I'm able to preserve that household, establish that household upon Quran and the Sunnah. So no doubt that requires that the person is able to spend from his wealth. But before all of that as well, is that the person is able to establish that he has enough knowledge that he can run that household. But again, it's important that the person does not make it conditional and make it bind upon himself that he has vast amounts of wealth. For no doubt, that time may never come. But if your person is able to effectively run a household, then he should hasten towards this advice from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And likewise, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned the same narration, and the one that is not able to, the person that's not able to fast, was not able to marry rather, then they should fast. And so this, no doubt, is advised or told jihad from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to aid the individual when he's seeking to remove himself from the fitan of this dunya. And so the person, no doubt, if he's not able, if he's not a person that can fulfill that, and he cannot fulfill those conditions, and the condition of ability to marry, then he should fast and embark upon fasting. Whether it be the Mondays and Thursdays, whether it be the fast of Dawood. The person should seek to do so and take from these advice of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, as when a person seeking marriage, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions tazawwaj al-wadud al-wulud. I marry the loving, forbearing, and childbearing woman. For indeed, أنا بكاثركم بكم يوم القيامة. يعني I will boast great numbers by way of you on يوم القيامة. And so this is from the characteristic that the person seeks from a wife. That the person seeks these particular characteristics from a wife. And so thus, the person first and foremost, when seeking marriage, again should not place these barriers in front of themselves. And a common barrier that a person may place in front of themselves is that they say that the person must be from this particular race or this particular tribe. And they say, if the person's not from this race or this tribe, then I won't marry from them. So no doubt the person is restricting themselves. And the person, no doubt, going back to what we discussed at the beginning, their focus should be upon the Quran and the Sunnah. They should be focusing upon the Quran and the Sunnah. And that they should adhere to this affair of zuhud. Adhere to the affair of zuhud. Adhere to the affair of being abstinent. And detach themselves from the dunyā. Essentially, this is an affair of dunyā. They should detach themselves from the dunyā itself. And when a person does state that I will marry, but only if they like this or they like that. One example I gave was the race. Then all they may be doing is placing hardship upon themselves which they don't need to be placed there. And then you have some people, they will state, however, for example, the same example, they will say that this is something from my parents. And my parents have made this conditional upon me. My parents have said that I have to marry someone that is Somali. I have to marry someone that is from Pakistan. I have to marry someone that's from Bangladesh, for example. And you find that they proceed to say my parents are racist, they're everything else. And you find this is something which is common, as stated amongst the people on a regular basis. And it's something that was asked as well to our teacher, Sheikh Khadija, because this is something which is rife within the lives that we live in. And the advice, Salam Mubarak, was advice which was beneficial. In that he stated that first and foremost, the person shouldn't only look to give dawah to their parents now at this point when they're looking to get married. Rather, they should begin with their parents in terms of dawah beforehand. Calling them to Islam, calling them to the Sunnah, calling them to adhere to that which is khair for them. Thereafter, the person should then seek to advise them about these affairs. So da'wah is an affair where no doubt it's continuous. Once we're aware of an affair, so we become aware of the Sunnah, from whichever means we became aware of it. And we may have, now at this point, we may have relatives that are not upon the Sunnah. Whether they're just directly not upon the Sunnah at all, they're Muslims or Mu'tasim to Islam, they're individuals that ascribe to Islam. Or there may be individuals that are not Muslim at all. Upon us in that regard is that we call them to the haqq. And we don't only call them to the haqq when it's for our benefit. So we want to get married, so now we want to call them to the truth. And if they don't accept it, then they're just racist. So rather, the advice was the case of, no doubt, you begin with da'wah with your family beforehand, before any of this occurs. Before you get to that stage. No doubt is a very beneficial advice. And in addition, I would say as well, that if the person feels that his family have made it binding upon him to marry from a particular race, for example, or to marry from a particular background, for that matters. If the person is able to do so, fulfill that, and fulfill the wishes of their family, then there's no harm in them doing so. Allah Ta'ala states, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah Ta'ala states, worship Allah alone, do not associate anything in partnership with Him, and be dutiful towards the parents. Likewise, in the hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ was asked about the most beloved actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hadith ibn Mas'ud, one of the things that he mentions, alayhi salatu wassalam, is birr walidain, be dutiful towards the parents. So in reality, the person should strive to do anything they can to aid them in relation to this affair of being dutiful towards the parents. So if they make a request from you, even though the request in reality may be something which may harm your search for marriage, but due to the fact that you adhere to that request as an individual, by you adhering to that request and seeking to fulfill that request, the bi'idhnillah will aid you in the greater goal of you seeking to be upon birr walidain. You seeking to be an individual that is upon this affair of being dutiful towards the parents. And that is what is sought from us as individuals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions first and foremost His rights within those ayat in Surah An-Nisa. He mentions His rights, and the right of Tawheed, worship Him alone, do not associate anything in partnership with Him. Thereafter, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentions, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and be dutiful towards the parents. The rights of the parents. Why? Because the rights of the parents, no doubt, are great. They're azim. Those rights are huquq azima. And so no doubt the individual, if their parents do make those demands upon them, then they seek to fulfill that which has been asked of them. However, they do not state, or they do not try to make something binding upon them themselves. If the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions hastening towards marriage, and whilst with shabab, then the person should not make it binding upon himself. Anything that is outside of that. This is something that you find has become a phenomenon in this time we live in, where the people make judgments upon small passages. We have small passages, a small, what they call profiles, with text messages. And they make a judgment upon maybe one or two words within that passage. So they'll read the passage and everything they feel is fine, and oh no, but height is like this. Okay, no. Or they read the passage and they say, oh, okay, but this person is 24 and I'm looking for someone that's 23. And it's something which is continuous. However, the person does not, it's important that the person does not lose sight of the reason why they're getting married. To fulfill that command of the Messenger of Allah, to fulfill and adhere to this affair of ibadah. We're here to worship Allah Ta'ala alone. And hence when we mentioned that it's upon the person to seek to have malazama of zuhud. They detach from the dunya. That their only use of in the dunya, anything they take from the dunya, is so that it can aid them with ta'atillah. Anything they have from the dunya, anything that they take from the dunya is something that aids them in being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not overindulge with the dunya just for its sake. So now, if you find that your person is sincerely looking for marriage, but he's looking to marry so that he may be an individual that benefits in the dunya and the akhirah. He's looking for someone that may aid them in the dunya and the akhirah. Then the reality is that they must be an individual that is looking upon the affair of the deed of the individual. And so, we reflect upon that, barakallahu feekum. And we do not make anything over-binding upon ourselves. For indeed, no doubt, the khutawat of shaitan and the steps of shaitan are clear and manifest. And the shaitan may engage in wasa'il, in different means, in order for us to be deterred from khayr. In order for us to be deterred from khayr. So a person may come across a brother that they see to be suitable, or a sister that they see to be suitable. However, something that they see from that, something maybe relatively minuscule, causes them to reject everything that they see from that person. And thus when they reject it, may delay them in getting married. And the reality is that they delayed themselves in hastening towards something which is khayr and beneficial to them. Because the wasa'il of shaitan can be many. It's not a case that the shaitan may call you away from or call you towards doing evil directly. It's not a case that the shaitan may call a person directly towards evil. As Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions that there were certain different means for the shaitan and different steps from the shaitan to lead the servant astray. He may lead them astray by way of falling into the major actions of shirk and the likes of that. But then it may occur that the person may be led astray by way of bid'ah, innovation, or the person is led astray by way of being called to ma'asiyah, disobedience, from the kaba'ir al-dhunub wa sagha'iruha, from the major sins and the minor sins. However, the person also can be called away, busied away from the actions by way of engaging them with the fudul. And the fudul, barakallahu fikum, are actions, they may be actions of khayr. They may be good actions. However, they are not the correct actions for that particular time and place. And there's a better action to do in that time and place. And so our Shaykh Abdul Hakeem, hafidhahullāh, he mentions an example of that. Is that the person between the adhan and the iqamah, so he's in the masjid and they've called the adhan. And so between the adhan and the iqamah, he reads Quran. No doubt reading Quran is a righteous action, it's kadhalik. It's a righteous action. However, is that the best action for them to do at the time? Is that the best action for them to do at the time? No. What is a better action for them to do at the time, which is legislated for them to do at the time? Dua. So it may not be the case that the shaitan will call you towards evil directly. An example of that is a person may be called towards recitation of Quran, for example, between adhan and iqamah. However, there's a better thing for them to do at that time. This could be for the means of the shaitan. So go back to our mawdu' of today, the topic of today, the person may find someone that's suitable. However, from the wasa'ils of shaitan may enter upon them and call them towards other than that which is good. So the person says, this is something which is common, the person says, no, I know I found this person, I found this sister, and I'm happy with this sister, but you know what, I'm going to leave it so I can go and seek knowledge. As if they are mutually exclusive. That if the person seeks knowledge, then in that regard, they can't get married. But in reality, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not one, you can do one and then you can't do the other. And you shouldn't place something that is maybe better for you at that time, in place of something which is maybe not as good for you at that particular time. And so this is the first thing that I wish to discuss with yourselves, barakallahu fikum, is that the person, no doubt, when they see the advice from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to hasten towards righteous actions, I hasten towards a particular action, then they need to take it seriously. Because no doubt, he alayhi salatu wasalam did not command us with something except that it's for our maslahah, except that it's for our benefit. And he did not warn us against something except that it's to our detriment. It's harmful to us. The second thing I want to discuss, barakallahu fikum, is when it comes to the affair of living in marriage itself and directly discussing the affair of the husbands, where a man, he understands, because from the foundations of his hukuk, he understands that he is the one that is the leader of the household. He is the one that is the leader of the household. And by way of that which he is upon, that the household must follow. And so everyone's well aware of the haqq of the husband when it comes to the affair of him being obeyed within the household. So he's obeyed by the wife. He's obeyed by the children, no doubt. Allah Ta'ala states, الرجال قوامون على النساء. That the rijal have been given authority over the nisa, over the women. The men have been given authority over the women. So they're well aware of that. However, the reality of that, barakallahu feekum, is that the man has the authority over the woman when it comes to him calling to good and establishing good within that household. And he has authority because of by way of that which he spends. He spends for that household. The infaq, the spending upon the household is from the father and from the husband. He is the one that spends upon the children. He is the one that spends upon the wife. If there's anything from the bills of the house or the obligation of the house, then it goes back to the father. So it's not a case where the man says that I must be obeyed and it's absolute. No matter what. For Allah Ta'ala has commanded us and informed us. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. Obey Allah and obey the messenger and those that have been given authority over you. Those that are the leaders amongst you and the rulers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, barakallahu feekum, Ati Allah, obey Allah. This is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one which is absolute. And you obey Allah in every single affair. Wa ati al-Rasul, and obey the messenger. And this obedience to the messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is absolute. For indeed, he, alayhi salatu wasalam, his speech and that which is upon is a sunnah. It's wahi. It's revelation. Thereafter, Allah Ta'ala mentions, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, and those that have been given authority over you. Those that have been given authority over you, barakallahu feekum, is referring first and foremost to the leaders amongst the Muslims. To the leaders amongst the Muslims. However, Allah Ta'ala does not mention the word before it, ati'u, and obey. Why? Because the obedience to the ruler is not an obedience which is absolute. Obedience to the ruler is an obedience as long as the ruler is not commanding you with ma'siyatillah. As long as the ruler is not commanding you with disobedience to Allah. So obedience to Allah is absolute. Obedience to the messenger is absolute. Obedience to the ruler is not absolute. It's an obedience as long as you've not been commanded with disobedience to Allah. And so thus, the ruler can also be regarded as being the ruler of the household, the leader of the household. And so when a man establishes a household with his wife, and no doubt it's upon that wife to be obedient to her husband, and be submissive to her husband, it's upon that husband to establish that household upon khayr, to establish that household upon good, establish that household upon the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. For no doubt, although it's an obligation for the woman to obey the husband, as long as not disobedience to Allah, the husband should be making, or should seek to make that affair of obedience easier upon the wife. How does he make it easier upon the wife? Except that he is a person that has demonstrated that he is trustworthy. And he has sound judgment. And a person that has sound judgment, no doubt, is the one that takes the affairs back to Allah and His Messenger. He refers the affairs back to Allah and His Messenger. He refers the affairs back to the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah Ta'ala mentions, فَلَا وَرَبُّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُونَ تَسْلِيمًا. Allah Ta'ala mentions that they do not believe, and they're not truly believers, until they make you a judge, and the Messenger of Allah and His Sunnah a judge in the affairs that occur between them. And they do not find within their own selves resistance in that judgment that is made, and they have an absolute submission to it. And this is how a person should lead his household. Go back to the Quran and the Sunnah, adhering to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That he seeks to be an individual that runs the household, where the wife knows that any decision that he makes, he is referring back to Allah and His Messenger. So when he makes a decision, and now it's binding upon the wife to obey the husband in that regard, it's easier for her to obey her husband. Because now in this regard, she knows that he has sound judgment. That he makes the affair of the Sunnah maqaddam. He gives precedence to the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence why when we state Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that we are Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, it's because it's the people of the Sunnah that have been brought together and they give precedence to the Sunnah over and above the opinions of men and the desires of men. And the person not overcome by way of his desires or by way of his emotions. He seeks to run the household in accordance with that which is the Book of the Sunnah. And so no doubt, if the wife sees that from the husband, then it becomes easier for her, as a person upon Sunnah, that strives to be upon the Sunnah, it becomes easier for her to obey that husband as well. And so no doubt, and this is advice, I guess, first and foremost, it's advice first and foremost to the husbands. Be examples, and be good examples to your families. Be individuals that are taken as good examples to your families. And that best of examples, no doubt, is the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As he alayhi salatu wasalam mentions, khayrukum, the best of you, for those that are best to their families. And the best of you are those that are best to their families. And so this is how we should conduct ourselves with our families. And the best nature we can have with our families, no doubt, is that we nurture them upon the haqq. You may find an individual, he complains about his wife. He will state that his wife is disobedient. Or he complains about his wife. He complains about the conduct of his wife. And then the natural question that is asked to them is, what have you done in terms of nurturing that wife upon Islam, upon the Sunnah, upon obedience, essentially? And generally, maybe the response would be that they're too busy to do anything or they don't do much. So no doubt it's upon us to reflect upon that as well. Just as we seek for our own children to be upright and obedient. The individual that has entered a marriage, then what is upon him and what is important for him in order to make that marriage successful. Like anything he does, any action he does, that action must be preceded by what, ikhwan? Huh? Intention, and knowledge. That affair must be preceded by ilm. And so when a person engages and embarks upon marriage, whether it be the husband embarking upon a marriage seeking to establish a household, or whether it be the wife beginning a marriage, entering a new household, upon them is to seek knowledge. First and foremost, to seek knowledge of the rights of that they are due themselves, as well as the rights that are due to the other spouse as well. But no doubt what we find when it comes to marriage itself is that marriage cannot be successful if the person is not fulfilling the rights of the other party. And so it's important, first and foremost, that the person seeks and is well aware of their own rights. So if it's a husband, he's well aware of the rights of the husband. And if it's the wife, she's well aware of the rights of the wife. Why? Why do you believe it's important that you know your own rights?
You don't ask for more.
So they don't ask, they don't ask for that which is exceeds that which is your due rights. What else as well?
If you don't get it, then you're not disappointed.
If you don't get it?
If you don't get something, you might have like too high expectation, but in reality that's not, you're not entitled to that.
So it's linked to the first thing you said, so you're not seeking something exceeding the rights. But also essentially as well, as a husband or as a wife, you want good for your spouse. You want good for them. So you want that they fulfill the rights of every individual that they need to fulfill their rights for. It just so happens that this in this scenario, it's your own rights as an individual. So it's not a case now that you are merely just seeking the rights of the spouse, or your own rights, should I say, due to the fact that you are only invested in your own maslahah as an individual. That you're only invested in your own benefit as an individual, but rather you look at the rights of the spouse because you are an individual that wants good for your spouse. But essentially this is your companion. And you want your companion to be upon khair. As the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions, Amar ala dini khalili, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِفُ. The individual is upon the religion of his companion. So look to who you take on as that companion. So the spouse is a companion. The spouse is a companion in the same manner that we know that each and every one of us, we take companions and friends outside of that union of marriage. And so we seek and we understand our rights so that we ensure that the other parties fulfilling those rights for their own good. And of course as well, we seek to find out the rights of the other spouse, to ensure that we as individuals are fulfilling those rights as well. So that we are fulfilling the rights of the other individual. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not established the rights of individuals except that it's for our maslahah, for our benefit as individuals, as well as the general benefit of the marriage itself. And so, when a person embarks upon marriage, These are the things that he should seek to study and be well aware of and understand how to fulfill each of these rights. What else do you believe we should study? What else should you study? What do you say? Now, if you study the rights of the spouse, you study his own rights. Now, what else?
Specific to marriage.
Marriage, yeah. Well, yeah, then around marriage. Rights of children. This is something that may occur quickly. We have children, inshallah. How to settle disputes. And looking at the asbab al-iftiraq, or our asbab al-talaq, rather. The means and the reasons why you find people separate and divorce. And you study these things not in a manner, or not as an individual that may be someone that is negative in the way that they're thinking, but you study these things because you want to avoid them. You study these things so you avoid them and you become aware of them. The first and the greatest reason why this occurs, and the splitting occurs, and differing between the spouses occurs, goes back to the rights. That one or both parties are not fulfilling the rights of that other party. And so because of that, you find that the individuals begin to split. And they begin to differ. And that they differ and they leave off the hadith of the sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the guidance that came from the sunnah of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam. Likewise as well, you may find that individuals, they lose certain characteristics, yani mahmouda, or take on certain characteristics. They take on certain characteristics which are blameworthy, and they lose or they become less or deficient when it comes to praiseworthy characteristics. For example, sabr. That the person decreases when it comes to the patience that they have with people. And so no doubt, they don't engage with someone when it comes to the patience that they have, and this increases causes of conflict. Likewise as well, linked to that, for what a person should study and be aware of, is being aware of not only the reasons for splitting so you don't avoid them, but also the ahkam of talaq as well. Some of the rulings when it comes to talaq, or some of the rules when it comes to divorce. Because what you find is that those that are jahil in that regard, so they have ignorance in that regard, they end up in disputes with the spouse. And generally, you may find it's from the rijal, because it's the men that generally have the right to give the talaq. And then they will say, and they will come forth with questions. That I said this to my wife, is it talaq? Or I said this, but the scenario was like that, and they build a whole scenario. Now they're not aware of whether it's talaq or not. And so they build a whole scenario surrounding that whole event. And they'll ask, is it talaq or not? Or she said this, is it talaq or not? Not knowing that she can't give talaq. And so each and one of these things, the person no doubt should seek to have knowledge of that. Again, to avoid it. For no doubt the person may not know, and it's something which is common, but the person may not be aware that the person can give talaq and he divorce the spouse when it comes to, or in a manner where they believe that they're just joking. So they say it as a joke. However, it's something which is valid. It's valid shara. And so the person know that they should seek to have knowledge in this affair. And not only have knowledge in it, but have knowledge so they can avoid it. Have knowledge so that they can avoid it. In any scenario where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained that it occurs that they divorce, they actually do divorce. Then upon them is to know the rulings of what happens in divorce. So they do not just act upon emotion. They do not act upon that which they believe to be best in that scenario. Not going back to the Quran and Sunnah. Again, as we mentioned, everything goes back to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. Everything. Whether we regard it as being something positive, whether we regard it as being something negative. A positive affair in our life, negative affair in our life. So in the positive in marriage itself, no doubt we go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is something generally what you find with the people, when it comes to the zawaj and the marriage, they go back to the Quran and Sunnah. And for the one that has tabassum wal intisab to Sunnah, the one that ascribes to the Sunnah, as Salafiyah, this is amal yasir, it's easy. Why? Because they're happy, they get married. So go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. Sahl. But when it comes to talaq, and disputes and marital discord, and divorce, well now it's a case of high emotion, negative emotion. Going back to the Quran and the Sunnah becomes an affair which is surrounded by su'ubah, it's surrounded by difficulty. However, just as it was an obligation then, it's an obligation there as well. And so no doubt in every affair that we have, we seek that affair is upon khair and mubarak. That is upon khair and it's a blessed affair. So one thing, the final thing we mentioned in relation to this, is that when you find individuals that they will divorce the wife, and they may divorce the wife in a manner which is, as the Ahlul Ilm mentioned, the scholars mentioned, is a manner which is bid'i, in a manner which is not in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah. So they may divorce the wife while she's on her menses, for example, which is haram. Or they may divorce the wife and state the talaq 3 times at once. It's bid'ah. Or what you find, and this is the most common, is that they state the talaq, and at that point they say, go back to your parents' house. And there's no iddah period. Or there's 3 months, or the woman lives out the iddah period within her family home. She lives out the iddah period within her family home, or within her own home, wherever she may be. But the spouses do not stay within the same home. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he mentions that in the period, the woman must stay within the home of the husband for that complete period of time. She must beautify herself just as she would beautify herself as the wife, as in the scenario where she is his wife. The kalam of Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah. And so this is how, if the person sincerely wants to be a person of sunnah in all scenarios, then they must follow the sunnah when it's a time of ease, and follow the sunnah when it's a time of difficulty. And that the individual in reality, he is an individual that goes back to ibadah, worshipping Allah at all times, and adhering to the worship of Allah at all times, and holding on to the sunnah at all times. And if he does that, then no doubt you find that this individual, but in Allah Ta'ala, will be successful. So it's going back to this affair of adhering to the Quran and Sunnah when we're looking for the spouse. In the marriage itself, making that family one which is strong and fortified upon the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because the family itself is just a small part of society at large. And so when the family is successful, then it plays a part in a successful society. For no doubt, if you look at if you have every family is upon the Quran and Sunnah in this society, for example, anything on another upon Quran and Sunnah, ta'awuna al-birr wa taqwa. The family which is cooperated upon righteousness and piety, and they cooperate with other families on righteousness and piety, then that strengthens the society. So everyone has their part to play. Everyone has their part to play when it comes to strengthening that family unit and strengthening the society at large. Allah Ta'ala knows best. And this, after that as well, as we mentioned, this is fulfilled by way of the individuals fulfilling the rights of the spouse, fulfilling the rights of the husband, fulfilling the rights of the wife. And just to end, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, as my throat is nearly finished. So just to end, that's in my throat, so I'll let you brothers do the talking, bi'idhnillah. Who can name for me some of the rights of the husband and then thus some of the rights of the wife, inshallah? Some of the rights of the husband, beginning with that, inshallah. What are some of the rights of the husband? That he's obeyed. He's obeyed as long as he's judging according to the Quran and Sunnah. That's one thing. He's obeyed. The rights of the husband. We've got rights and you don't know what your rights are. Now, that's his right. The right of the husband.
That the wife doesn't let someone enter that he's not happy with.
That the wife does not let anyone enter his home. That from his rights that no one can enter his home. That he is not pleased with entering the home. No, Sheikh. مسمعك. ولا مرة ثانية معلش. ولا سرة شكرا. Now, and she does not spread his secrets. She does not spread his secrets, correct? She does not leave the house without his permission. She does not leave the house without his permission. She doesn't fast without his permission. Now, also so Ramadan. Huh? The nawafil. Now, he doesn't spend the wealth except that which he's pleased with. Now, so it's a healthy amount, inshallah. The rights of the wife. Rack is what it's called. This one there.
You house her to the standard she's used to.
You house her to a good standard, to a standard that she's used to. You house her to a good standard, the one that she's used to, yeah.
The husband spends upon her, feeds and clothes her.
He
Spends upon her, feeds and clothes her.
spends upon her, feeds and clothes her. He teaches her, he nurtures her. He nurtures her upon Quran and Sunnah. Yeah, nurtures her, advises her upon the faith.
Doesn't abuse her verbally.
No. So I can't hear this. Marry a second wife to make a problem for her. I don't think you're being serious. Now, I thought you say Ahmed.
You shouldn't abuse her.
You shouldn't verbally abuse her. Physically. So basically, he should be the words that he uses with the wife. He should be kind in the words that he uses towards the wife. And when addressing the wife, with kind words. Now, these things soften the heart.
Important for both of them. Does get enough important for both of them.
Just get enough? No. I cultivated her. Raising the children. Is that her right? It's both rights in terms of cultivating. But if anything, he makes the household conducive and allows her to be able to raise the children with ease. Now, so it doesn't make it difficult for her to raise the children. I like some of that. Allāh alam. Ikhwa. Jazakumullah khairan. Tfadal. He played with the wife now as well. He played with the wife. No. Jazakumullah khair, ikhwa. Allah yafadakum. After that one, I didn't want to go up to that side anymore. Jazakumullah khair, ikhwa. Al-hayakumullah. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.